Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to Upkick MMA, episode number 189. I am Brendan. UFC Fight Night, Calvin Kattar versus Arnold Allen. We're going to cover all of that here. Like, unfortunate night of events here for some fighters. There's some injuries on this one. We're going to cover the main card, the main event on this one. If you're looking for the prelims, it's going to be in one of the next videos, as well as the Bellator prelims. We're going to cover Max Griffin, Tim Means, Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Jared Vanderaa. Tresean, Gore, Josh Fremd, and the rest of the card here. The rest of the card is Khalil, Rountree versus Dustin, Jacoby. All right, before we get into it, if you're into MMA, you're into podcasts about MMA, you like UFC, Bellator, PFL, I cover all that stuff here. 2 or 3 videos every single week, breaking down fights round by round, trying to understand the decisions, giving my take on them, and some future predictions and where I think these fighters should go. All right. Subscribe to the channel so you know when the next video is coming out. So stupid. All right, let's get going here. All right. Arnold Allen getting his 10th victory in a row in the UFC, undefeated in the UFC here against Calvin Kattar. Now, the fight ended because Kattar hurt his knee. All right. I am not going to say anything other than that when it comes to why the fight ended. All right. That happened. There's no two ways about it. It's unfortunate, and it really sucks for Calvin Kattar. The guy's had a tough run of it as of lately. You can see here. His track record does not so his wins and losses in the UFC. It doesn't. You just look at the numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he's 7-5 in the UFC. That's not the best UFC record. But real quick, before we hop on the, he doesn't belong here or he doesn't deserve to be in the UFC kind of hype train, which I hope that nobody is, but a more casual fan who looks at a guy who's 7-5 in the UFC, his overall record being 23-7, so that still looks good. It's just that a lot of those wins are outside the UFC. Let's look at the guys he's fighting. Josh Emmett, who's angling for a title shot here. He has, only 3 losses in the UFC. He's, this was basically a title eliminator fight when he fought Josh Emmett. Now, because of the kind of logjam that happened with Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski at the top, that didn't it didn't work out to be a title shot, or hasn't yet. It hasn't materialized. He beat Giga Chikadze, who was had like all the hype behind him, and he ends up just fucking tuning him up in the last 4 rounds of that fight. The first round was close, and he got cracked pretty good himself. Calvin Kattar versus Max Holloway, former title holder, one of the best ever in the featherweight division. Probably the best featherweight not named Volkanovski or Aldo. And, he beat Aldo twice later in his career. So there's some argument to be made there, but he lost to him convincingly, I might add. You want to look at the striking numbers, 445 from Max Holloway. If you ever want to watch one of the most picture-perfect performances for striking, watch this fight. And yes, Max Holloway does get hit, and Kattar hits hard, but Holloway just put on a fucking clinic. It was fantastic. Beat Dan Ige, a top 5 contender. Jeremy Stephens, that before Jeremy Stephens got out of the UFC, he was an up and down fighter, but he's all action all the time. Great fighter. The fight against Zabit Magomed Sharipov. By the way, the reason I'm breaking this down, if you're looking for a specific breakdown on one of the fights in the main card, the timestamps are down below. The reason I'm going through his record here is I'm coming out in defense of Kattar. Now, I am a fan of both fighters. I really like Arnold Allen. I like Calvin Kattar. So this is not a favoritism thing here. This is more just I want to run some defense for the guy and kind of give you context on why this is so disappointing that he hurt his knee before we get into the breakdown, because there's not much to break down. There was only 1 round of actual fighting. So Zabit, again, was this killer, the guy who's undefeated, like he's going to be the next big thing. He hasn't fought because after COVID, he got sick and whatever. And before that, he was just the next big thing. And Kattar did lose this fight. It was an absolute loss, but in the end, Kattar was coming on, and Zabit his cardio was getting taxed. Zabit was not a 5-round fighter. And had this fight been 5 rounds, it would have been interesting. Could he still have won? Absolutely. But Kattar was coming on, and Kattar has really good cardio, so that would have been good. Ricardo Lamas back in the day when Lamas was like the bully. He was still doing the damn thing back in 2019. Renato Moicano. So his loss to Renato Moicano. Again, back in 2018, we're talking about a top 5 fighter here. Or a guy who's angling, always in the top 10, that kind of thing. He beat Shane Burgos and Andre Fili, who both in their own rights are fantastic fighters. This guy's record, Calvin Kattar's record in the UFC, is all killer, no filler. This guy has fought one filler, Chris Fishgold. He has one fight in his UFC career, which he definitely should have won, and that's Fishgold. Every other one of these is a competitive fight against a top contender, and because of that, he ends up with a 7-5 record. So now let's break down the fight. But I just want to tell you, like, kind of why this is disappointing, because in his last, like I said, in his last couple fights, he's lost 3 out of his last 4. And for some fighters, that's, they get their walking papers. But I don't think this hurts him as far as his rankings go. We'll go over that in a second and where I think the title should go after this. But let's talk about what happened in the first round, because I just want to set up context for Arnold, or for Calvin Kattar, and how good he is too. Okay. He's very good. And that I just want to give some context for that, as well as run some defense for him, because his record doesn't necessarily portray how good of a fighter he is. You really have to look at who he fought against, not just the number. And then this will also tell you how good Arnold Allen is. It's unfortunate that he did hurt his knee, because this first round was great for Arnold Allen. And the takeaway is going to be instead that Calvin Kattar hurt himself, and that's why he got the win. That's not a train of thought you guys should go down. Comment down below. Let me know, like, did you think Calvin Kattar, did you see something in that first round that showed you that he was going to win this fight? Did you think he was going to catch Allen? Did you see like holes in Allen's game that Kattar could exploit? I know it was only one round that we got to see. I just didn't see anything from Kattar that showed me he was going to end up winning this fight over the 5 rounds. Right? It's not that he couldn't, or make a resurgence. Obviously, he's in there. He's a really good fighter. And could he have caught Allen? Absolutely. Could Allen have faded going later? Absolutely. Kattar is a later round fighter. He is a true 5-round fighter. It's unfortunate that we didn't get to see the whole thing play out, because I want Allen's win to be legitimate, and I want his argument for the title to be legitimate is the word for that, but also kind of championed by not only the UFC, but the fans. I want some promotional push behind him. So in this first round here, there were some good low kicks from Allen early. If you watched my other 2 videos from this weekend, my 1 video so far, but if you watch my next 2 videos from this weekend, you're going to hear me say that a lot. He was good low kicks. Everybody was doing it. Kattar was shifting out of the way of some of the low kicks, but you can see here that in the first round, Allen landed 4 of his 6 low kicks. Kattar he did not throw out the volume that he normally does. He normally throws out a ton of volume. I understand that he did, he attempted 57 strikes, but I guess that's normal, but I just didn't see the normal volume that I do from him. And I know I'm a little bit, it's colored by, his later round performances in some of his other fights. So maybe that's what we were seeing. He's a little bit of a slow starter. A left hand got through for Allen that swelled up the right eye of Kattar a little bit. That was early. They didn't really mention that one, but it did. Allen landed a combo backing Kattar up, and then a left hand from Allen. Like, this thing just kept landing over and over and over again. It was beautiful, because he's in the I'm pretty sure, yeah. So Allen was fighting in southpaw, and I think Kattar was fighting orthodox. So the battle was actually, instead of being your lead hand in the jab, which is also effective, but it's the battle of the rear hands that tends to be the based off of the orientation and your foot position, that tends to be a more reliable shot. Kattar jumped and landed really weird and ended up grabbing his leg. He did get up at the end of the round, but and he went to the corner. But it was a great round for Allen, even before the knee. So he was way ahead. So you look at the striking numbers here, 27-14 in favor of Allen. I had him winning this round regardless of how that ending sequence played out before the injury, which happened, like I said, right at the end of the round, which is another reason why this is super unfortunate. And Kattar got up and he was walking around. He said he was good to go. The doctor came in to check him out. And then immediately in the second round, he goes to put some pressure on it, and he collapsed. Dude, that sucks so much. It does, man, because this guy, Calvin Kattar, he's done nothing, like I said, nothing but fight freaking killers in this division. And he's had a really hard run, and he's succeeded in a lot of these fights. And rightfully so. He's, put in this main event of this card, and to go out like that and not be able to just show all the work you put in, it's really unfortunate. Something that Dominic Cruz, by the way, I might touch on it later, but I love, love, love Dominic Cruz and Michael Bisping. I think their combination, individually, I think they're great. Okay, I love the UFC commentary team. I think everybody has really stepped up. I have a few people that are lower on my tier list of people that I don't like, but I put them above a lot of other organizations' commentary teams. But in this scenario, I know people give Dominic Cruz flack, and by himself, and maybe with Brendan Fitzgerald or whatever by himself, and or with some other fighters, like Paul Felder. I love Paul Felder as well. They don't play as well together. Michael Bisping with other people, I think, is fantastic. I love Michael Bisping's commentary. Again, with other people, he does fine. I just think they mesh so well. There's a little bit of antagonism there where, they have played back and forth because Dominic Cruz is such a grapple heavy commentator. He loves the stuff. He loves breaking it down. And then Bisping, he's against, laying and praying, which I am too, but he has like an affinity for the striking because that's where he comes from. And then they have this fun banter back and forth where, sometimes they'll even make fun of each other, and then they make fun of themselves. It's beautiful. I really love this commentary team. Brendan Fitzgerald, actually, I don't know if he was on the analyst. I don't know if he was on the commentary team, but dude, they have stepped up so much and brought an air of professionalism as well as lightheartedness. It's just a beautiful mesh when they get together, and I'm really glad Bisping is back on the commentary team. I know he was out filming a movie. So, that aside, Dominic Cruz mentioned that he's glad that Kattar got hurt in the fight and not in training. Now, he said this and he broke it down. He's like, he's not saying he's glad Kattar got hurt. He's saying he's glad it happened in the octagon because at least he got paid, right? He made it through training. If he had gotten injured in training, he would not have made his paycheck. He wouldn't have made it to the fight, and now he ends up having to push off and not have not have revenue stream. So, I don't know if I've ever touched on this before, and we'll do a little quick aside here. That's an interesting perspective. Because there are consequences to losing a fight that can hurt your revenue going forward, right? Obviously, losing a fight means you're less likely, not that you won't get, but you're less likely to get another main event. If you were in the main event, you're less likely to get another one, which means your publicity might go down. Your chances of getting to the title obviously go back, which is obviously more money. Your popularity might go down. There's a lot of things being kicked down in the rankings can do to you that actually hurt your revenue stream. So it would be interesting to see at what level. Is it always better? Here, I'll put it to you guys. You let me know what you think. If you've made it this far in the video, I'd really appreciate it if you comment down below. You let me know what you guys think, because I haven't actually put together a thought process for this. And maybe we can address it in a future video. What do you think is better? Like, let me know your reasoning for it. Do you think getting injured before you get to a fight, and kind of give me a timeline, like right when the fight is announced up until right before the fight? So I would think that getting injured right before the fight is the worst, because you've already put in all the training, the time, you've paid everybody, and now all of a sudden you don't get your paycheck. So obviously getting hurt right after they announce the fight is probably the best time to get hurt, if there's, a best time. So you let me know what you think for that. Or do you think it's better to get injured in the octagon? Because if you don't get injured, if you get injured beforehand, you don't get a loss on your record, right? So your future, your revenue stream, and all the stuff that I explained earlier, that doesn't necessarily go away because you have an opportunity to compete at your best, and you're not injured for that fight. So therefore, you can, have a better chance to win the fight and get the main event, get the title shot, that kind of stuff, which brings in more money. Or do you think it's better to get that loss on your record? And then same in the fight. Do you think it's better to get injured really early in the fight, regardless of how it was playing out? So, if you were winning that first round versus whether you were losing it, as long as it's close, I think it doesn't affect you as much as getting injured late in the fight. So if you were winning that fight and then you get injured late, I think that's probably the best scenario, or like one of the best scenarios? Or do you think because I think getting tuned up for 5 rounds and then getting injured in the last round is probably the worst case scenario. And then I think the best case scenario is either getting injured really early in the fight when you can't really make a conclusion whether or not it was competitive, or very late when you were winning the fight. So let me know what you guys think. Put it down below. So let's look at the rankings, shall we? So here's the deal. We'll do this and then we'll move on because there's some other fights I want to talk about on this card. So we're going to talk about all of them. Alexander Volkanovski is obviously the champion at featherweight. Dominant champion, absolutely. There's no controversy anymore. There's no, Max Holloway won this one. The last fight with Max Holloway is definitive. He's the champion, guys. Whether you like him or not, I wasn't as confident in his title. I don't even know what the word. His legitimacy. I wasn't as confident in it. Obviously, I knew he was good, and if you have those close of fights with Max Holloway, absolutely you belong up there. But I wasn't convinced that he was the undisputed champion. There was still some dispute of whether or not he actually won that second fight with Max Holloway. Now, after that last one, there's nothing to convince me about. And this is the thing is, like, I didn't dislike Volkanovski, but I didn't think he was, when he beat Yair Rodriguez, I wasn't a fan of Yair, or not Yair, sorry, Brian Ortega. They just fought. I wasn't a fan of Brian Ortega getting the title shot when he did. I thought there were some other contenders that deserved it a little bit more than he did. So when he went up there and fought and got tuned up by him, and yeah, he had those Hail Marys that almost landed and made for an excellent viewing and reviewing of the willpower and determination of Alexander Volkanovski and just his mental fortitude, showing what a champion he is. So that, even though I didn't like necessarily the matchup, that showed me that obviously Volkanovski's good, but that's something I already knew. I wanted to see him fight Max Holloway again. I got to see it. Volkanovski is a champion. So now I put that in perspective because Volkanovski is undisputed. He's the king. But there are plenty of contenders in this division, and he's angling for a fight against Islam Makhachev. So he wants to go up and fight Islam for the 155 belt. Now, normally, or not normally, this is very contextual and whether or not I'm a fan of it. If you have cleared out your division and there's no clear contenders, I am absolutely a fan of champion versus champion fights. So why am I not a fan of this now? Volkanovski has plenty of fun and deserving title challengers, which we'll talk about here in a second with Arnold Allen. And Islam Makhachev just won the belt. Yes, he beat Poirier. But there's other contenders who have just shown their mettle and they're deserving. Like Beneil Dariush, I just went over last weekend talking about whether or not he deserves a title shot. Right? Fiziev deserving a title shot. There's a lot of guys in this division that Makhachev has not fought that he can fight for the title. And yes, it isn't as deep of a contender. It's not as contender rich as the featherweight division, but that's okay because the featherweight division is contender rich. So he has plenty of people to fight. Islam Makhachev has plenty of people or some people to fight. So let those fights play out. Let some of these guys eat each other, right? They'll beat each other, and then whoever Volkanovski fights next, and then whoever ends up fighting for the next title contender. So then he maybe has to fight 2 more and defend his title 2 more times. That means he defended the title 4 times or 5. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times in a row. Now there's a good argument because if Makhachev defends his title twice and there's no clear contender coming up or there isn't a lot of hype behind someone, absolutely do this. But this is not the time. I really don't feel like it's a good time for this. We just had a logjam here with him and Max Holloway. Max Holloway still sitting here in the wings. He has fun fights with a lot of these guys. He can knock out some of the contenders. There is a lot of movement that could happen at featherweight. Let's not do this. So let's get into Arnold Allen here. Arnold Allen, like I said at the outset, is undefeated in the UFC. You want to see... Oh, good grief. I didn't have the rankings up for you guys. I'm sorry. There's plenty of guys here to for Volkanovski to fight. If you look here at... This is Arnold Allen's record. Lots of green on here, guys, for those of you guys watching. for those of you guys not watching this, lots of green. Win, 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 win. All 10 in a row in the UFC. Yes, he does have a loss on his record, but it was before he came in. He is 19-1. Now, compared to Arnold or Calvin Kattar's record that we touched in the onset of this video, is it as strong? Not even close. Not even close. Look at the guys he's fighting. Alan Omer, Yotsin Mitza. I mean, Makwan Amirkhani, that was a good win back in the time, but it's it's the up-and-comer win that's good versus a relative veteran. Mads Burnell, again, good fight, good submission for him. Jordan Rinaldi, nothing. Gilbert Melendez, it's a veteran. That's not the strongest one. Nick Lentz, it's another one of those. Sodiq Yusuff, that's a good win. It's an up-and-comer, strong fighter here who only has one loss on his record, and it's to Allen in the UFC. One loss in the UFC. So that's a great-looking win now. Dan Hooker, again, Dan Hooker is very much like Calvin Kattar in his record. Like, yeah, he's got some losses on it lately. He's 1-4 in his last 5. But look who he's fighting: Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Nasrat Haqparast, Islam Makhachev, and Arnold Allen. So, and he's fighting Claudio Puelles next. So that's kind of a good get well fight for him. So yes, the fight by fight leading up to his last 3 doesn't have the gravitas that Calvin Kattar's does, right? Doesn't have those veterans and contenders and strong fighters. But his last 3 fights are all against ranked opponents. And maybe not Sodiq Yusuff. Maybe he wasn't in the rankings beforehand. But at the time now, he's ranked number 11. I mean, before this weekend, Arnold Allen was ranked 6, but Calvin Kattar was 5. And then even before that, he fought Dan Hooker, right? So he fought Dan Hooker, who at the time was ranked and, was angling for a title shot himself. His last 3 fights set him up for a title shot, and I absolutely think he deserves one. Now, I will put the same caveat that I always do. More than one fighter can deserve a title shot at the same time. It really comes down to scheduling, both with the fighters' layoffs, injuries, those kinds of things. It can come down to promotional push and publicity and those kinds of things as well. So there are a lot of factors that can go into it and who ends up getting the title shot. But I absolutely believe he deserves a title shot. Now, Yair Rodriguez, he deserves a title shot, in my opinion. He has worked his way up there. Now, I don't think he has as strong of an argument as someone like Josh Emmett. I don't think he has as strong of an argument as Arnold Allen, but in his last fight, he did beat Brian Ortega, who I think at the time was ranked number 2. So having Yair fight Allen or Yair fight Josh Emmett, Yair's already lost to Max Holloway, so you can't do that. Josh Emmett versus Max Holloway, Arnold Allen versus Max Holloway. So do I think Arnold Allen's going to get the title shot here? Probably not. Based off how this fight ended, even though I think he was winning the fight, it doesn't matter. So that's what I'm saying. I think he does deserve a title shot. It should not happen. It's probably not going to happen. Based off of scheduling, that could change, but it's unlikely. I do think he deserves one, so I'll put my stamp there. He deserves a title shot based off his last 3, especially off his last 3, but he's 10-0 in the UFC. You can always sell that promotionally. I think that's an excellent reason to be pushed for a title and a great way to market it. So a great win for Allen. I think he looked great beforehand. It was unfortunate the way it ended. Okay, let's talk about the Dirty Bird. He lost. Tim Means versus Max Griffin. Now, again, I like to state my bias at some point when I'm breaking these fights down because, it can color my opinion and sometimes color the rounds. I don't think it does here. I think I stayed pretty neutral and objective, but I'll just let you know. I am a fan of the Dirty Bird. I like Tim Means. It might be the nickname. I like the way he fights. I like how gritty he is, just how tough he is, even though his chin's kind of gone. It's just, I like him. I like the way he fights. I also really like Max Griffin. I think Max Griffin has an incredible amount of talent, and if he can really put things together, he can be a contender in this division. Do I think he's ever going to fight for a title? Probably not at welterweight. He just has so many holes in his game. So I think he can put it together and do some decent work here. But let's talk about this fight. So Means was aggressive early, going in. He was going in on this fight pretty really aggressive. Max landed a huge right hand that dropped Means, so that kind of stopped the pressure. Tim reversed. Tim did had a reversal and got back to his feet. He did really good off his back, which is awesome. Good to see from Tim. Tim was doing better on the feet to end the round, going high with kicks and using check hooks to kind of keep the distance because he's a rangier fighter. He has long limbs, and he was trying to keep Griffin away and keep that power away from him. But Griffin just landed too much in that first round. Striking numbers bear that out as well, 25-17 in favor of Griffin. Obviously, he had that big knockdown, big punch, so the damage goes to him as well. So I ended up 10-9. Tim stayed in the center, digging straight to the body, so he kept his he held his ground really well. Tim's poking was working, but Max landed a right hand that made Tim drop to a knee. So Tim did much better in this round, and if you look at the striking numbers, 20-13. So what he was doing was he was poking and prodding and keeping the distance and landing really good with the kicks. I think he landed, let's see here. Yes, he landed 5 leg kicks this round, and then shots to the body, 8. A lot of those were kicks as well. So he was keeping the distance, right? He was keeping the distance really well in this round, and then he ended up getting caught right with like 15 seconds left, I believe, or close to the clapper. And what happened was he got punched, and then Tim dropped down. Now, obviously, I thought it was from the punch, but if you look at it, there's an angle there where you could see that he got hit, and he immediately drops for. It looks like he did go for a double leg there, so it looks like he's dropping down for a double leg. So it's really hard to tell how much that last shot from Griffin damaged Tim because they went right to the ground and there wasn't a lot of damage after that. And it was hard to tell, like, how close was Tim to being out there? Based off what you saw, there wasn't a good way to tell that. And it was so close, like I said, so close at the end of the round. I actually gave this round to Tim Means, but it was close. You could give this to Griffin, absolutely, based off of that shot. And, the striking numbers weren't so one-sided. There was only a 7-strike difference. I just felt like Means did enough work leading up to that. And that shot landed hard, but it didn't flatline him and didn't fling him backwards. He dropped down to a knee. It was close. And I understand if you're having a visceral reaction right now, like, how could you give Tim Means that round if he got dropped? I get that, but I explained why, okay? So I explained why I thought Tim Means got that round. And then on this last round, Max stayed on the takedown, staying on top for most of this round. Not a lot of striking here. Tim Means was on top 10-4 as far as the striking. Not a ton of damage either way. Tim worked his way back to the top and did some damage on the at the end of this round here. I don't know if it was enough. He didn't land anything so significant that it really swung it in his favor. The control time was 3 minutes and 3:44 for Griffin, and Means did have a minute of control time himself in this last round, and he did throw a lot of strikes. So maybe that's why there was this split decision here, with Eric Colon giving Means this last round. I don't agree with it. I gave this last round to Griffin. I do. And Derek clearly giving it 30-27. Even Tim was like, when he heard it for him, he was like, no. He felt like he did lose his fight. And Derek clearly giving that second round to Griffin. Understandable. It makes sense. In fact, let's look at the scorecards here. Yeah, Eric Colon gave the last 2 rounds to Tim Means. And then, the last round is the one they gave to him. So Ben Cartledge gave the last round, not the second. So, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think I am. But I thought that second round was actually closer than the last round. But they're so close that it's not a robbery either way. It's not a horrible decision. Good win for Griffin. I think Tim Means is kind of on his way out here. It's bittersweet. He's had a great career, but it's coming to an end, and I think it's time to hang up the gloves, at least not put him in front of killers anymore. Okie dokie, let's talk about some heavyweights. Waldo Cortes-Acosta taking on Jared Vanderaa. Oh, boy. All right, this was weird. Weird fight because it was a battle of leg kicks. If you look here, 69% of the strikes landed by Vanderaa were to the legs. He landed a total of 39 leg strikes. and then a majority of Waldo's were to the head. So if you look at the total striking numbers, they're actually there's the total significant strikes are in favor of Acosta. So that's fine. So Acosta was warned. We'll talk about it. So Acosta was warned twice about extending his fingers early. In fact, the referee Mark Smith, right? Yeah, Mark Smith. So Mark Smith actually warned him right when the fight started that Waldo, like, watch your fingers. Then he warned him twice before the first minute. So he was warned twice in the first round here. That's fucking garbage. Acosta was swinging giant right hands, and Jared was throwing low kicks. Acosta landed 2 right hands, but Jared was still standing somehow, so he landed 2 big damaging shots. Not a ton of action with Jared. He was backing up, waiting to counter. He was waiting too much, in my opinion. The leg kicks from Jared were adding up, and Acosta had to switch stance, and he actually started lifting his lead leg. And Acosta took another one, and he had to switch stances. Waldo won that first round with the damage up top, but the movement is compromised, and Jared, if he kept the leg damage up, he might be able to win that fight with leg kicks, is what I wrote down. So this first round, if you look at it, Acosta 22-13 as far as significant strikes go. Majority, 12 of the 13 strikes that Vanderaa landed were leg kicks, and we all know that judges do not score leg kicks properly. So even if Acosta didn't land those 2 big shots, I still think he would have ended up winning this round, and he did outstrike him anyway. Although I would rather, like, Bisping and Dominic Cruz actually mentioned this as one of the reasons I love them. They were talking about it. They said, what would you rather take? Would you rather take a jab to the face or a hard leg kick? And they said, I will take a jab to the face all day than a hard leg kick. And if that's coming from fighters as far as like damage and how it feels, we should really take that into consideration, right? Obviously, all fighters have their biases, and when it comes to grappling and effective grappling and how you score things, that's fine. But when it comes to just pure damage and damage for damage, right? You're trying to grade what shots do more. If all the fighters kind of talk about this the same way, leg kicks are worth more than a jab. Hard leg kicks are worth more than a jab, and I think we really need to change our opinion on that. Because again, which one is more likely to end a fight? Because that's how they grade damage. Like the consequences of that strike, which one is more likely to end a fight? And more fights have been affected and won through leg kicks than a jab. Not that a jab doesn't set up other things or that a leg kick doesn't set up other things, but leg kicks impair the movement. Leg kicks can end the fight. Jabs don't do that. They set up other things. It's a means to an end, but it's not the end, usually. Obviously, some people have got knockdowns with jab. They've had very stiff jabs, hard jabs, and if you land 1,000 of them, it adds up. That's good damage. But damaging shots are worth more based off of their immediate damage, okay? And a hard leg kick is worth more than a jab. So second round here, Jared was able to move forward now because Acosta can't move as well on that lead leg. So Acosta was swinging wildly, trying to end the fight because he kept taking leg kicks. He took 13 of them in this round, although the striking number is 25-21 in favor of Acosta. Acosta was howling at him after he was like getting his face, like, oh, after taking a couple leg kicks. Jared could have won that round in the way because he spun Acosta around a few times with leg kicks, but my guess is the head strikes from Acosta were going to outweigh that in the judges' eyes and counted more on the scorecards. I lean towards Vanderaa because I felt like he did enough damage. He did enough damage up top as well. He landed 4 strikes to the head. Cortes actually dug to the body more this round. 12 of his strikes were to the body. Those hard leg kicks I felt like did more than Acosta's jabs. And yes, he did land a couple good shots up top. I lean towards Vanderaa. Like, this was a closer round than I think was probably in the judges' eyes. And then Waldo was using his jab really well in this last round, and that makes a difference. This guy was a former baseball player, so he's swinging those big right hands, trying to get a knockout. Obviously, he's got the power in his right hand, but he started to really do some damage with that jab in this last round. That's when it's effective, right? Last round was close. The leg kicks did more damage than the jabs, I thought, and I will see. And I love Vanderaa. I was leaning towards Vanderaa, but I'm not upset if you go towards Acosta. Again, the striking numbers 26-22 in favor of Acosta. Relatively close round. Again, separated by 4 strikes, just like the second round. So if you scored it for Acosta, you're probably the second round for Acosta. You're also going to score the last round for Acosta. I thought Vanderaa did enough in this last round that you could make the argument that he did enough damage with those leg kicks, but Acosta did, enough up top as well. It was really close. I was leaning towards Vanderaa just because I felt like those leg kicks were adding up and doing a ton of damage. So that's where I was leaning. I could be totally off on this one, but I thought he did enough this round to at least make the argument. Like I said, it was close. It was close. So either of these last two rounds. Now, Ron McCarthy gave it 30-27. Understandable, right? Camijo, let's look here and see what we had as far as the scorecards go. Scorecards. Everybody had the last round for Acosta, so, maybe I'm a little bit off on that one. The second round, Camijo and Weeks gave it to Vanderaa. So, again, we're not all crazy here. Some other people were seeing the same thing as far as those leg strikes go. So if you scored that second round for Vanderaa, why could you not score that last round for Vanderaa? Maybe you thought the damaging shots from Acosta were enough. I'm okay with that decision. I had it for Vanderaa, right? I wouldn't have been upset if, I understand if people would have gotten upset because, he took more punches to the face. But like I said, it was close. All right, let's talk about a UFC debut. Josh Fremd making his UFC debut against Tresean Gore. This fight wasn't bad, right? It was kind of interesting. Gore got in on a double and got the takedown immediately in this first round. Had some decent control time, 2 minutes and 36 seconds. Gore stuck on him after Fremd ended up getting up. So Gore ends up getting the submission in the second round here. Gore wanted to stay in the clinch. Gore with the lift and a really big slam takedown in this first round. Gore with some snappy jabs. I thought he should have used it more. The dude threw out this jab so freaking fast. Fremd's best attacks were his leg kicks, his stabbing kicks to the body. Fremd landed decent damage, bringing it to Gore near the end of the round. Gore landed really good stuff of his own and had that slam and ground control. If you look at the striking numbers, they are in favor of Fremd, 18-8. But with that ground control time and the strikes that landed on the ground, and I thought that, Gore landed some good shots of his own. I gave that first round to Gore. Let's see what the judges did here. Oh, no, one of the judges, Eric Cologne, gave it to Fremd. So, I don't think I'm crazy. I thought, I could see that going for Fremd, but I leaned towards Gore. I felt, especially because that slam takedown, right? That wasn't not a soft get him to the ground trip. He lifted him. It was a high amplitude takedown. That is damage, guys. That is damage. So the act of slamming him to the ground counts for damage itself, not just control time. And then on the second round, Fremd on the attack, starting to use his range really well. He landed 6 strikes, significant ones. I thought he was it looked like he was about to open up and really start lighting up Gore. He lands a really good shot, then he went for a takedown like an idiot and got guillotined. He lost the fight because of the lack of experience, in my opinion. Not that he wouldn't have lost the fight anyway, that Gore wouldn't have found a way to win. Absolutely, that's always a possibility. But what really led to him losing this fight was the fact that it was just his inexperience. He probably thought it's this. We see this a lot with younger fighters coming into the UFC. They're used to a playbook, a plan, something that they put out in front, something that they practice all the time. Strike, 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 mixing your grappling with your striking. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. It can get you, you dance with the girl that you brought. So if that gets you to the UFC, why would you change it up? So that's not a problem. But you also have to learn to make reads in what's going on in the fight. And on the ground, yes, he was able to get up, but Gore clearly was, competent on the ground. He was strong, and he's strong enough to, hold his own down there. So if you're having an advantage on the feet and maybe you want to mix in your grappling, that's understandable. So because it was the first takedown attempt from him, I'll give him a pass. And like I said, it's inexperience as far as I'm concerned, because I felt like he was doing such a good job. He looked comfortable on the feet. Gore looked like he was getting tired. It looked like Fremd was going to start being able to really put in work. And he, instead of pausing for a second and kind of taking account of what was going on, he decided to go for that takedown, and that's what lost him the fight. It really did. And it was a good job by Gore, taking advantage of a situation that was put in front of him. And that's what I mean. He's the one who made the adjustment. He's the one who's been in the UFC. He's the one who's fought at the highest level now. And he did what he had to do to get the win. Absolutely great fight for him. Okie dokes. Let's talk about the first fight on the card. What a striking battle this was. And a little bit of controversy. we will get into this one. All right, Khalil Rountree getting the win, split decision win over Dustin Jacoby. This was a close one, guys. It was close, but we'll talk about it round by round why I think so. If you are a striking fan, this is the fight for you. So if you didn't watch this whole main card, or if you only caught certain parts of the main event, or maybe you're just listening to this and then trying to pick what you want to watch based off what I say, this one's worth watching, guys. It's good. It's good MMA striking. There was a lot of technical battles going on. There was some sloppiness here and there, but there were adjustments made on both sides. It was very good. So the left hands were landing early for Rountree, early, and he landed a beautiful lead hook. Jacoby was mostly throwing leg kicks, looking to play the long game, trying to keep the distance. Sound familiar? Jacoby was staying measured with his attack, looking for range, and landing kicks in the interim. So he was, measuring with his jab and then throwing out kicks in the meantime to get some damage. If you look at the striking numbers here, they were in favor of Jacoby, 34-20. But the big left hand from Khalil to end the round. It was a really close round, and the fact that Khalil didn't, but the fact that Khalil didn't stagger Dustin is what makes the difference for me, because the sheer volume from Jacoby seemed to be enough. Now, 34-20. So Jacoby outlanded him by 14 strikes. If you counted for more damage with that, the two big strikes from Rountree that I would give him, I could see you leaning that direction, but I really do think that Jacoby landed enough big strikes of his own, mixing it up really well, landing hard kicks, decent stabbing kicks to the body, and doing damage upstairs as well. So if you want to count, so let's just look at head strikes from this perspective. So 12-11 in favor of Jacoby. So if you want to say, well, Khalil landed two big shots that did more damage. So, okay, Rountree's has the advantage as far as head damage goes. Body damage, it's not even close, right? Jacoby clearly wins the body damage one. Does it outweigh those punches? Probably not. But now let's look at leg kicks. He landed 10-6, and he landed more total strikes, I believe, as well. Yeah, more total strikes as well. One more. So it's just, I felt like Jacoby did enough in this round throughout. I thought it was measured. It was more measured, and it was more like a trickle of damage. Whereas Rountree kind of landed more damage with two shots in a big. He had a fire hose, and he hit him twice with it, and Jacoby was just spraying him with a garden hose the whole time, right? So I gave this round to Jacoby. So I had him up 10-9. So Khalil was loading up too much in the second round, and his gas tank was tapped out just a little bit. He started to slow down. He wasn't moving as well. Started the round with a really good jab, but then went back to big swings. Dustin landed 3 or 4 jabs at a time, following up with big shots, finding the target. The second round, the striking numbers were crazy. Khalil able to stay alive with some good shots at the end. I felt that Dustin did a lot of the damage early. And if you look at the striking numbers here, 39-35. So these bars are a little bit deceiving because Jacoby threw a lot more, right? He threw 105, so his percentage was lower. But like I've said before, I don't want to get into it too much. But your striking accuracy does not mean you win the round because you're more accurate with your strikes. That's not how that works, right? The strikes in themselves are the reward. And when you go to it, throwing strikes is more valuable than not throwing strikes, right? So if I throw 10 strikes at you and land all 10, and you throw 20 strikes and land 10, you only have 50%. I've landed 100%. Well, let's say the damage is equal. You would win that round because you have more offense than I do. All other things being equal, that is a difference maker. You are being the aggressor. You're trying to end the fight. You are throwing offense. Therefore, you win that round. So in this round, I leaned towards Jacoby. And because, Rountree didn't have a definitive moment in this round. He didn't have a giant strike that staggered Jacoby or anything like that. Jacoby landed a lot of damage early, and it's hard to take yourself out of it and say, hey, what happened 3 minutes ago? It's hard to remember that when you're watching these fights, but you got to take into account a hard strike in the first second of the round is worth exactly as much as a strike in the last second, right? If they're the same strike, they're worth the same amount of points. If it does the same damage, they're worth the same. So you got to keep that in mind. And I felt like Jacoby did enough, right? And then if you want to say damage was close or even, well, now, he's thrown a lot more offense. So he's throwing more too. So I had this for Jacoby. I had him up 20-18. So this last round, Dustin back to work, and Khalil able to land a really hard straight left hand. Khalil still looked tired, but he was moving better in this last round. He was able to keep up much better than he did in the previous rounds, as far as avoiding some of the damage coming back his way. Although he did get, apparently it was 47-30 in favor of Jacoby. I felt Khalil did enough because he landed some really big knees. I said Jacoby was probably up on the strikes in this last round, and it was close again, but I leaned towards Khalil because I felt like he did enough and to win this last round. So I had it 29-28 for Jacoby. So let's go and look at the scorecard, shall we? They should be all over the board, right? Of course they are. Okay, good. Because this is acceptable. I don't agree with it, but this makes sense. All right, so Ben McCarthy gave the first round to Jacoby. So let's just talk about the dissenting judge in each round. So Chris Flores is the only one who gave Khalil the first round. Actually, all three judges gave that last round to Khalil. Cool. That's how I saw it. Right? I had Khalil getting that last round. I think that makes sense. I felt like he did more damage, and he avoided he didn't take as much damage in that last round. Good. Second round here. Dissenting opinion from Ben Cartledge. He gave that second round to Rountree. Now, this is not a robbery. It was close, but I leaned towards Jacoby. Like I said, I felt like if you have your short-term memory, you kind of lean towards Rountree because at the end of the round, he was doing well. Now, if you're less experienced or you want to make the argument that all the things Jacoby didn't stop Khalil from moving forward, that is not how you score this. You can't do that. It's not graded on a whole. The whole round is not graded on a whole. Like, who did better at that in the end of that round, right? Just like the third round of a fight is worth the same amount as the first round of a fight. Just because you did just because you're not out of the fight in the third round doesn't mean that nothing in those first two rounds count. All the damage you took in those first two rounds count for those rounds individually. That's how a round is scored. All of the first 4 minutes or 3 minutes of that round count for the same amount as the last 2 minutes. Okay? So that's why I leaned towards Jacoby. I could understand a Rountree card. And the first round, again, it was close. It was close, guys. This is not a robbery. I'm explaining my reasoning for why I picked Jacoby. And Ron McCarthy gave this round to Jacoby. The only Ben Cartledge and Ron McCarthy both gave it to Jacoby. Chris Flores is the only one who didn't. So, Chris Flores, I mean, this is not a bad decision. This is not bad. I don't agree with it, but it's not bad. We don't need to throw out the word robbery every time a decision doesn't go the way you saw it. Okay, guys? So, that is it for the main card. If you're looking for the prelims, I'll be putting that video out later. If you're looking for the Bellator prelims, it'll be out later. Bellator video, the main Bellator 287. I posted that last night, so that's up already. And then I also broke down the Jake Paul Anderson Silva boxing match. So I broke that down as well. So if you've made it this far in the video, please subscribe to the channel so you know when the next videos are coming out. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for spending time here. It means a lot to me. Like I said, those are my other videos. You want to go check those out. If this is the only video that you end up watching this weekend, I appreciate your time. It means a lot to me. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Have an amazing week, and I love y'all.